call the meeting to order of the October the 7th, 2021 regular meeting of the BZA. Call the roll, please.
Kevin Skaggs.
Wes Summers.
Jim Newman.
I'm going to amend the minutes, the agenda before we confirm it, and move the approval of the minutes to last, only because Commissioner Stallworth is stuck in traffic trying to get in the building, and she has some questions about the minutes, and so we'll move that. Otherwise, I'd like to have a confirmation of the agenda, please.
I'll second.
Hearing no negatives, I will confirm the agenda. First thing on the item tonight is a presentation by Ivy Development of a traffic impact analysis for proposed townhome and single-family detached development on plus or minus 89.4 acres located in the terminus of Maple, Green Forest, and Bobby Drive. Tax District 006-10-09-002 and 06-11-03-164 as required by the variance approval of January 7th, 2021. This was item number ZB 20-008. And I want to read just a brief statement from the board. I just want to make sure that everyone here tonight and everyone that may be listening or watching, that when this Board of Zoning Appeals met on January the 7th, 2021, to decide the request for variance at ZB 20-008, that whether we approved or disapproved the request, the variance request, there was nothing we could do to stop the project from being developed as long as it met all of the requirements of the North Augusta Development Code. However, this board wanted to make sure, as we recognized there would be heavy traffic after this development was put in place, that would be heavy traffic affecting almost every neighborhood. We wanted to make sure that a traffic study was completed and they presented it to us as part of the variance. I need to let you know that even if we don't like the traffic study, or even if we do like it, there's still nothing we can do. They have fulfilled their requirements to us by presenting it to us, doing one and presenting it. The next step, if anybody wants to appeal this, is to go to the Planning Commission meeting whenever this plat is approved and state your reasons for not wanting it developed. So having said that, we will now...
Can I add one thing?
Yes.
During the BZA meeting, when this came up, I recused myself from the meeting since I live on Green Forest. Since we're not voting on anything, I'm going to stay tonight and listen.
And that's perfectly okay. Thank you. I sent a letter to Ivy Development Corporation asking that they do this, and they have replied, and so is Mr. Paradise, would you like to add anything before we hear the presentation?
Mr. Chairman, I think you pretty much covered it. This is the board had 5 conditions that they placed on the order approving various requests to reduce the lot size for townhomes, and this is number 3 that conditions of approval. And by me doing this tonight, they checked all the boxes meet the conditions of approval that we need.
Thank you, sir. I will add that since this is a presentation, the only people that can ask questions tonight will be the commissioners on this committee. The city has passed an emergency proclamation that the chairman of these certain committees can now hold these virtual. I chose to hold this one so that if there's anybody that lived in the neighborhood or any other citizen that wanted to see the presentation, they could come and see the presentation. Turns out that the problem is the projector's not working tonight, so we're not going to be able to see the presentation anyway, except what we have on paper that they have given us. So with that, I will turn it over to the developer. If the developer's here to give us a presentation, please. even though I don't think it's necessary, I will swear you in, please. Raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
State your name, please.
Jason Winkter.
Ms. Wing.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jason Winkter, Ivy Development and Macro Property Development. That's the entity we set up to develop this piece of property. So just to give you a little bit of quick background, we hired Steve Castle as our traffic engineer with Infrastructure Systems Management. And so he'll come up in just a minute or two and give you all the detail you ever wanted to know about traffic studies. But I just wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are and what we've been doing since January. So in your packet, you'll have, of course, the location map and then the site layout, excuse me, showing what we have designed as Section 1 and also the future Section 2. And what we did in January was we met with staff and to determine the scope of the traffic study project. And city code for this type of project, we need to study the major intersections within 1/2 mile of our project. And so staff told us initially to study 1/2 mile by road length. And so that's what we did on the first traffic study. We turned that in for comments, and staff asked us to go back and look at 1/2 mile radius. And so that actually picked up the intersection of Knollwood Boulevard at Pisgah. They had also asked us to go ahead outside of that 1/2 mile and study the intersection of Green Forest and Five Notch as well. So we've done that, so that's a little bit beyond the scope of city code, but we've studied all those intersections, and it's probably a good thing too, because we know that those are hot button intersections, and so everybody wanted to see what the effect from this development may have on those. So with that, I'm going to let Steve come up and just dive into the actual numbers and show you how he did this and what he came up with.
Thank you, sir.
Does everybody have a copy? How you doing? I'm Steve Castle, traffic engineer, 20 years. Do you need my address too? Or no?
Well, if you don't mind.
Okay, 1557 Broad Street, Augusta, Georgia.
Are you the same Mr. Castles that used to be the traffic engineer for the city of Augusta?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
It's been a while since I've done it without a PowerPoint clicker, so I may have to go back and forth between my glasses because.
Well, that's fine.
I was
We
a lot younger when I
apologize
first
for not having it.
Oh, that's fine. It happens. I'm just glad that we knew in advance we could do this. So I just flip in order. Obviously, you got to cover. But this one, as Mr. Winkter was saying, it was sort of a challenge from the traffic standpoint, because you based on what your ordinance says was a half mile area of impact. I think is really what it's. And it's not really clear whether that's a radius or a driving distance or what from what point in the development you measure it from, the center or whatever. So I try to move different ways to try to get actually the worst case scenario. And plus, when you're dealing with level of service, if everybody understands what level of service is, it's basically a measurement of delay in the traffic. It's more for that kind of measurement. It's more for like corridors, like a heavier, like a collector road, not subdivision streets. It's not really a good measurement in my opinion, because delay is really defined as how fast you want to go versus how in the time that you're not going that fast. So if I'm on a 45-mile-an-hour road, the delay is associated with me tapping my brakes and going from below 45 until I get back up to 45. So if you're like at a signalized intersection where you have to come to a stop, that's really what you look at. And so you're looking at average delay of anything less than 10 seconds is going to be an A. And when you got a heavy volume on a main line and a low volume on the side streets, you may have a heavy delay on the side street, but the overall delay, because I've got 5,000 on one road and you 200, they may be waiting there 2 minutes, but the average delay is actually going to take you down to an A, if that makes any sense to anybody. That's just a quick overview as we get into this. But anyway, got the location map. I think everybody is sort of aware where that is. Through this, the general site layout for the first section, we expected this to be built out in about 3 years. but 97 single-family homes and 70 townhomes. From talking to Jason, or Mr. Winter, that, you know, it's probably going to be a little bit less than that, but I think we pretty much covered the worst-case scenario with that. And just to kind of show, I showed where the two stub-out roads go into the development, the 2 half-mile radius of impact areas. You see that doesn't really reach out to 5. Where am I sticking glasses? Used to the 5 Notch Road at Green Forest, but as a traffic engineer, I knew that was really what was going to be impacted the most. So I was more than willing and told Jason, even though it's outside the half mile, I think we need to do that one as well. And then also you got Knotty Pine coming off of Green Forest, and it's a cut through over to the school. Felt that one was also necessary because that's a split point where most of the traffic, some traffic's going to split off, and actually it was a pretty significant amount for what's existing out there right now. It's about 40% going that way. I was a little bit surprised in that, but I think there's a new signal at Pisgah and up there, and a signal at one of those roads up there. I'm sorry, my stinking glasses. They're made to see up close, and I'm trying to watch them from a distance. So being old is new to me now. So anyway, I don't know. My printer didn't work, but I had the 4 intersections circled, kind of where we're at with the Green Forest at 5 Notch Road, Pisgah at Knollwood Boulevard, and then Green Forest at Knotty Pine, as well as the entrances. And then the other thing is what we did was we counted it for the existing conditions. We counted for the morning peak hour, and because there's a school nearby, decided to try to encompass that time period when school's letting out, because we know that's when it's going to be. That's when people complain about the kids speeding and doing all the running stop signs, everything else, and then also the evening peak hour, which would be your typical rush hour.
So you did count during school hours while
Yes.
school was in session. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I counted when school ended.
Good, thank you.
Because the 7 to 9 a.m. usually you count for 2 hours, and within that 2-hour period, you find the 4 consecutive 15-minute periods that have the most traffic, and that's considered your peak hour, or what most people call rush hour. From that, obviously we're in the midst of a pandemic with COVID. After meeting with city staff, there was some guidance, and unfortunately that I wasn't made privy to when South Carolina DOT came up with it, but that's not a problem. But anyway, they said that for new traffic studies during that period of time to increase the traffic volumes by 12%. So we had to go back and do that and adjust the existing volumes up by 12% to account for basically the reduction based on COVID. And from that, we did an analysis using the highway capacity manual, which is, we use the Synchro software, which you plug in the numbers and it runs through an algorithm and comes up with a delay. And like I said, with the Green Forest, all these intersections are operating in a level service area, which is pretty much free flow. And like I said, that's an average for the whole intersection. The side streets for that one, as you expect, you start to increase. You start looking at, for just the volumes coming off those side streets, you're looking at a C to D range, which is not uncommon during a rush hour for a side street with no signal. You're going to wait a minute. I think everybody expects that when you go to a road that's not signalized, which is about normal. But the other thing is that we looked at the South Carolina DOT's requirements for left turn lanes, and that's based on a volume versus what's coming up behind you versus what's approaching you. There's a little graph that you follow, and what we found from that was that right now, if South Carolina DOT, based on their guides, with the existing traffic, you would probably need a left turn lane at that intersection. That's an existing issue. It's not really part of the development. It would benefit the development in the area overall, but based on the development code, that's another one where it says if it's there to accommodate existing deficiencies, typically that's considered what we call a system improvement in the business.
Let me ask a question right there.
Yes.
Mr. Paradise, who would be responsible for building that? Would it be the state, or would it be the city, or would it be the developer, or if it gets done?
The way I understand it, if the
problem already existed prior to the development, then you don't hand it off to the developer. It's a system improvement that would come back on DOT. If it's something that the developer is creating and putting them over that threshold, then the city could require the developer to make the improvement as a condition on the approval of the subdivision.
And that will come up again at the planning commission level, I guess,
Yes.
or with you, the planning department.
No, so that would be more of a planning commission decision.
Thank you.
But what they're saying, isn't it, that it's already existing?
You know, I know Mr. Skaggs, you say you live along that roadway. I've been out there, I mean, you know, these volumes are, is that your experience? Do you see that it needs a left turn lane coming into the development?
I haven't experienced a problem turning left.
Yeah, that's what I say. Sometimes these numbers, you gotta, field conditions, you're gonna that's why in the study I say, you know, careful consideration prior to implementing such a
I think level service of C and D is reasonable.
coming out, right?
Well, yes, it's eastbound and westbound.
Yeah.
South approaches.
I've been out there and observed it, you know, I mean, it's always nice to have somebody who's out there every day, because somebody can challenge you. And I said, the rest of the roadways operate within the level of service A range. Obviously, at Pisgah, Knollwood, very slow hours. You know, there's a little spike on the side street that's not really present for the other hours. For the background, the next page, research historic volumes in the area, kind of threw out the COVID-related ones, you know, as far as the drop. You know, when that's going to recover back to normal, your guess is as good as mine. I think a lot of people are getting used to like it, living in or working from home. But you know, as you know, you've had some significant growth here over the years. 1%. Looked at 10 years of data, and you know, population estimates from the governor's office and things like that. For 1.5%, that's a pretty good clip. You know, because I think Augusta typically about 0.5. Around that to say. So you've had some significant growth that you probably all know. We're looking at a 3-year build out, so took that 1.5 and applied it over a 3-year period to increase the volume, so background traffic, and it would basically be traffic in the future that does not include this development.
Well, I thought you had somewhere that there would be a decline in traffic in the future. Did I misread that?
I don't think I did. If I did, it's a typo.
I don't think so.
You don't think, okay. I thought that,
There may have been sometimes, would you do, probably a table, did you have the report, the original report?
I thought I read the whole thing.
How did you stay awake?
Just to throw something in about traffic, Commissioner Stallworth was late tonight because of heavy traffic.
Yes. And I live the closest of anybody here.
Oh, okay.
I left at 10 minutes of 7.
Oh, that right there, yeah.
Yeah.
I get to walk. I mean, every time I look at a bike, sometimes that was.
That's right.
But I got to eat at Antonio's. That was always a treat for my daughter. So. But anyway, the background conditions over the 3-year period, traffic increases, the delay will obviously increase a little bit. The left turn lane is still going to be needed at that intersection based on the volume criteria. But similarly, most of the operations are about assembly what they are right now. Next page is how much traffic we expect from the development. Is anybody familiar with the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation report? Basically going back all the way. We're on the 11th edition. I think it's getting ready to come out. But anyway, the group of traffic engineers had nothing better to do at some point. Collected all this data from similar developments all over the United States. It's been going on since the 60s. Just to kind of get an idea of, you know, how to do several studies. I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds to try to come up with an average per unit to try to break it down and make it so where we could do studies, projections like that. So anyway, these numbers are grabbed from that. You know, you apply those factors, which actually is a logarithmic graph, and it'll give you pretty much what you would expect nationwide numbers. I could tell you from my experience in Augusta, I've counted them and checked these things before. This area does not generate it at the level ITE projects, but for argument's sake, and probably the worst case scenario, it's always nice to have that number because it will get a little bit higher. But typically you're looking at anywhere from 50 to 70% is what we were seeing in our developments that we when I was at Columbia County as well as Richmond County. But all that to say, I still went with the IT numbers because I have nothing else to go by.
Well, I'm looking at page 13. As shown by the data in Table 3, traffic growth in the immediate vicinity of the site has been fairly stable over the past 10 years. Recent data over the last 5 years showed a rather aggressive growth pattern, but more recent data over the last 2 years show that the overall growth is showing signs of leveling off or decline.
Yes. Yeah, that's sort of typical. But, you know, these things always have little micro spikes within them, so that's why I look at it, you would want to look at a longer term, like a 10-year period, to really get a stable growth. I mean, you're always going to have, even on a daily basis, traffic may fluctuate 15%. And so
this is just a 2-year thing, and we need to be looking at the 10 years.
Yeah, look at 2 years, because, I don't think anybody would accept anything that came in here and I said, well, you have a negative growth rate. Guess what? Your traffic's going to go down. We're going to make everything better by building our development. But yeah, I mean, so you want to show some growth because that's what's going to happen here. I mean, I think it's being what's going on in this area. I mean, this place is booming right now.
I didn't know what that meant because development is happening in other places versus right there.
Yeah, and that's what you've got some commercial development here. I mean, so if you really look at how somebody builds a new grocery store, you don't really sell more loaves of bread in the area. You just sell them in different places. And traffic is redistributed as development follows. And that's probably what you're seeing with some of the new developments around here. But as that new development comes and it stabilizes, it'll start to grow again. There's always a shock to the system when that happens.
Okay.
But that's the thing. When you're relying on that kind of data, each one of those, you got 10 years worth of data that's basically 10 days that are 10 snapshots in time during each individual year. And so that's why you would want to look at a longer term as opposed to that. If that makes any sense. So back to the trip generation. So basically for the total day, 24-hour period, you look at about 1,500 new cars, new trips, whatever. From this development, 115 or so going in the morning, 106 in the midday, which is the after school hours that we were just talking about, and then the evening would be about 150. You can see what's coming in versus what's coming out. You know, the splits are obviously different during the evening as they are in the morning. More usually in the midday, they're more 50-50.
So could I ask a question then about that number then? So I know you said it's conservative, but so I saw some report. So I was looking with from my house perspective because I'm on Green Forest between Naughty Pine and Heath Street, and that section there right now, the existing condition estimated or counted 668 volume per day, and this is going to add 1,500. When you add all that together, the traffic was basically 3 times what it is now. Okay, is that?
Yeah, I mean, based on the numbers that are here, that's like 3 times. You're down below, you're by Heath Street.
He's on 90 Pine.
Okay, so everything has to go through you. Basically.
Yeah, so about 3 times what it is now. That's what I take away.
I mean, that, based on this, okay. I can't argue whether these numbers, it's a conservative. I do believe these numbers are likely conservative, but even if you broke it down into like the peak hour, so the morning peak hour, for instance, you got 120, so you're looking at about 2 cars a minute, basically. Look at it like that way. Same thing in the midday. So you look at the daily traffic. I mean, that's a 24-hour. You're gonna have fluctuations. I mean, there's gonna be periods where there's no cars on the road, but it's all. But it's a quality of life issue. I do understand.
This is also taking in that it's not 1,500 new cars. It's somebody taking a kid to school and coming back home and so forth. So just it's a trip. Might be one person going 10 times in and out of the neighborhood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just somebody coming in and out. For that area, like he says, you're down there, I mean, you're on a peninsula, so there's nothing really coming in and out other than right that area. There's no splits. So to that area, at the worst case, you'd be about that. So distribution, you can see, where the cars are going, and that's where I would take these numbers and split them up and send them out to the directions where basically existing traffic patterns are. About 43 going on West 5 Notch Road, to the south, about 17 going to the north. North Pisgah, like I said, I was surprised that Knotty Pine had about 40% of the traffic really kind of going that way, and they split at Pisgah, but I think it's the new signal up there. It's probably attracting quite a bit of them. So, other than that, you can see, I took the 3 intersections, you got this one just to show what new trips would be on that one. You see the new turning movements. The ones that are not in brackets, those are the morning rush hour. The ones that are in the square brackets, that would be the midday, and then the ones in the parentheses would be the evening peak hour. You can see that number, especially once you start getting Knotty Pine, things start splitting. The numbers start to diminish as you get time. The further away you go, the less impact it is, obviously. And that's basically, I mean, this is residential, you got existing residential, so I just look at what everybody's doing now, and that's assumption would be that pretty much you're going to follow that same pattern. And for the future condition, so I add those numbers to the background. This is the incremental impact of the actual development. So you got your existing, what's today, growth without that, and then now there's add more traffic on top of it, and this finds the incremental impact of the development. Obviously there was some increase in delays at the intersections, but when you start looking at the letter levels of service, it was not an increase really of any significant.
Can I ask a question about that?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm looking, I think your level of service are D on the approaches on both of them.
Oh, okay. I mean, D and C are pretty much, when you start getting into E's and F's, that's where you really start to see.
Well, I mean, it's not the same as it is now.
As it relates to level of service, yeah,
It's a
it's
D and a D. I don't know, where you get the overall as a level, as an A? I don't see that in the report.
Overall as an A, that would be the average of all cars going through the intersection. So some of them are going to have 0 delay. So, so if I've got 2 cars, one's 30 seconds and one's 10, and one's 0.
Is that on this page anywhere?
It's at the top.
I just didn't get that when I'm looking at the report. Everything's good. That's what that 3 million A?
Yeah, that's the intersection. That's what all.
That would have been fun anyway. We didn't film before the trip. We did film before I put on my face. Okay, sorry. I had that same issue last time. Okay. One of the big things that I was asked about when it first started, and I covered in the report, I really covered in this, and that was the closure of Hugh Street. Everybody was asking what I recommend. I don't really, I looked at the impact of how the roadway system exists now. That was my scope, and that's really what I'm. So I don't really. Connectivity is always a decent thing, but I don't really have a recommendation as far as this report. That's I don't know. I just don't know why.
Well, I did like what you said, that you admitted that it would probably be detrimental to the houses that are already there.
It would be a quality of life issue. Obviously, you would be shooting traffic past
Right.
people that are not used to having cars, and that's. I'm talking about people who aren't here to defend themselves and making a recommendation because they probably didn't think this development was going to touch, and that's why I was careful on how I address that, because connectivity is always a good thing, but there's no connectivity right now. Sometimes it can be bad. That's why you would probably want to do a study or something like that. Maybe anything, traffic calming or whatever.
So if you did connect Hugh Street, they would come in, from Georgia Avenue, down Hugh onto Dove. Isn't that Hugh that comes on Georgia
It's a
Avenue?
little, it's not really a very direct route.
No, it's not.
It is kind of turned, but, you would probably see some reduction in the right and lefts coming in. So like the left turn lane probably would go away, because you start getting balanced. I think people are going to, you know, if it becomes too difficult to come this way, they'll go a different way until everything starts to settle down.
Hugh Street opening up creates a cut through to Paul Knox Middle School.
That's true,
You
right.
might get more traffic through the neighborhood that way.
You're right, it
The
does.
neighborhood fought that pretty hard several years ago when that came up. So.
It was brought up, and I didn't want to not address it. Some said, but my thing was, you know, as part of his development, showing the impact of the existing roadway system, that would be something that would have to be looked at as a completely separate issue, because it's got far-reaching impact beyond what this development is going to do. Any questions, or you stayed awake through reading the report and listening to the summary?
I'm just curious what made you go into this line of work.
I don't know. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed both sides of it. I did private sector like I'm doing now, and then I did public for 13 years, and I like it.
I'll give you one attaboy about that. I think you actually devised the traffic patterns now that Augusta National using, aren't you?
Yes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, I did that. That was fun. I was a lot younger then, and I had a lot more energy.
Any more questions? Yes, go ahead.
So a couple things about this, the way the model works and just control delays. When it says so many seconds, in practical terms, when does the clock start and when does it end?
So it's easy to think about, like when you're talking about a side street coming in there, it's going full speed until you get back to going full speed. So if I'm Washington Road and I'm cruising along at 45 miles an hour, I see the signal turn red up there, I take my foot off the gas, I start slowing down. That's when the clock starts.
Okay, so if there's a line of cars there, it's when you get in line.
Yeah, and then until I break loose and it starts free flowing again until I get 45 miles.
Okay.
It's a hard thing to explain, and as you know, I'm probably on tape, but probably something I missed in that highway capacity manual described. But that's the best way I know to describe it.
So it doesn't necessarily start when you get to the intersection itself. Like I said, there's a line of cars, there are 5 cars in line. When you get in line, that's when the clock theoretically starts.
Yeah,
Right?
at least they actually have an English word for it. Usually for like lines, they call them queues and things like that. We like to use fancy French terms and other things to make, I guess, to elevate our intelligence.
Another question is the model. I think I read where it assumes people driving the speed limit in the neighborhood, which is what, 25 miles an hour.
It assumes, depending on how, this is more of a macro model. But I can also convert that to a micro model. So it would actually model the cars where you could see them. And that one, you would have individual cars, and depending on the model, it factors in, you know how complicated the model. The one I have, probably 10 different driver types. And some of them are my grandma, so I don't want to offend anybody else. Who might creep along, but then you also got the 18-year-old who just got the Camaro. So,
Yep.
It goes from there, and of course, but the only thing it doesn't, all of them have their benefits and weaknesses.
So if the speed limit or the miles per hour that's assumed by vehicles increase by 5 miles an hour, does that change your control? I mean,
Not at a stop sign.
oh, it doesn't.
No, because you, at the end of the day, you're coming from a stop. So that's really getting to the stop sign and getting through. Same thing with a lot of traffic. You got a queue move up. So if somebody turning left in Green Forest, cars start to stack up behind them, and you're trying to turn left on DeForest from Green Forest onto 5-notch road. You've got to wait for that queue to clear. Want to have a good math test? It's 4 plus 2 in. So count the number of cars, multiply it by 2, add 4. That's about how long it'll take to clear.
I think study confirmed what we all, at least I suspected, is it's going to make things a little worse. I mean, as far as traffic goes.
Yeah, I mean,
There's 3 times the traffic, and I don't, whether it's a C or D is my definition of the manual and the codes and the model, but it's going to get worse. And so and I know the developer may not be responsible since it's outside the half-mile radius, but I think the city ought to anticipate having to do something. There's options there, and I don't know that any of them are good. And so,
It looks like the best option was the Cascade Road, build that bridge.
probably the most expensive too.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, that's just.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Kelsey? Clerk Alton? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I will ask you one other question. You know somebody named Nat Chandler?
Excuse me?
Do you know somebody named Nat Chandler
Chandler?
from Greenwood?
No, I don't. Does he know me?
He knows you. Okay.
The one thing is I've gotten older and met so many people, the more it's easier for me to figure. I'm better with faces than I am with names, especially if those faces have name tags on their chest.
When you were with Augusta National, he claimed that he knew you. That's
Oh,
all.
he probably did. I mean, that's,
Thank you, sir.
right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Anything of Mr. Winiger? Mr. Paradise? We appreciate the presentation. You did what we asked you to do, and we appreciate that very much. Good luck to the Planning Commission. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all we need of you tonight. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just asked a question. I know public safety is kind of busy,
They can leave.
and that's what I'm gonna ask you.
Regular traffic.
We appreciate y'all being here. We expected a bigger crowd tonight.
Y'all have a wonderful night.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You could have dismissed them a long time ago, Tom, and we'd have been fine.
That was your call, sir.
Okay, the next thing we have tonight is a request, and it's number ZV 21-009. It's a request by North Augusta Middle School for a variance at 725 Old Edgefield Road Highway. Tax District number 013-09-01-001 from the North Augusta Development Code, section 13.8.3.L, which does not allow an electronic message center in a P, public use zoning district, and message center is limited to 50% of the sign area to allow the EMC in the P, public zone use district, and allow the message center area to be 60% of the sign area. First thing we'll do is have a public hearing, and then we'll have consideration.
Mr. Chair, before you start the public hearing, I'm going to recuse myself because I still have an association with the school district, and North Augusta Middle is a part of that. And also, I'm not supposed to even be involved in the discussion, so I'm going to step out there, but since there's another piece of business at the end, I'll hang around.
You can actually sit here, you just don't have to say anything.
I might make faces, and then somebody would say he's trying to influence.
Mr. Buchanan? Excuse me, Mr. McCall?
With that, I will open the public hearing. And I'll go through the things that we have to fine for. A variance to be granted in an individual case of unnecessary hardship if the Board of Zoning Appeals makes and explains in writing all of the following, and they all have to be in the affirmative. Number one is unnecessary hardship exists. Number two, there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. Number three, the conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. Number four, because of these conditions, the application of this chapter to the particular piece of property will effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, and number 5, the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and to the character of the district will not be harmed by granting of the variance. Harm to the character of the district may include structures that are significantly out of scale, and the creation or potential of the creation of excessive noise, light, traffic, or incompatible late-night activity. Number 6 is the approval of an application for a variance from this provision of Article 13 signs, regulating the size, height, appearance, and location of the sign. The Board of Zoning Appeals may also find that no alternative signage solution complies with the provisions of Article 13 is available and will provide adequate visibility, recognition, and understanding. Number 7, the Board of Zoning Appeals may not grant a variance in effect which would be A, to allow the establishment of a use otherwise not permitted in the zoning district, B, to extend physically a non-conforming use of the land, C, to change zoning district boundaries shown on the official zoning map. Number 8, if the unnecessary hardship is self-imposed by the applicant, the variance should not be granted. Number 9 is the fact that the property may be utilized more profitable should a variance be granted, shall not be considered grounds for a variance. And number 10, in granting the variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach to it such conditions regarding the location, character, or other features of the proposed building structure or use as the Board may consider advisable to promote the public health, safety, or general welfare. Based on these findings of fact, the Board of Zoning Appeals may approve with conditions, or deny the request. So with that, I will ask Mr. Paradise if you could give us some information on this, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Basically, this is requesting an electronic message center to be in the P Public Zoning District. It's not allowed in that district. It is North Augusta Middle School. The sign is 60% readable or electronic message center instead of our code requires it not be more than 50%. So there's 2 variances here. One is to allow it in a zoning district where it's otherwise not allowed. And the second one is to allow the electronic message center to be a larger percentage than what would otherwise be allowed. This came to our attention when the contractor called me and said, "Y'all require permits for schools?" Well, on signs. I said, "Yes, sir." And schools are a little bit different. School construction is regulated by schoolhouse construction out of Columbia. In other words, the new schools that they're building, when they build a school, our local building inspectors do not inspect those. They come out of Columbia. They do all the code review, everything on that. But they are required to meet our zoning ordinance, which regulates signage, the size of the signs. As far as the structure of the sign, we would not be able to enforce that, but as far as the size and our zoning ordinance, that does fall under the city's purview. So whenever he called, what we found out was that the sign had already been erected. So what staff did was 2 things, is we said, one is you either take it down or you request a variance. We'll give you an opportunity to request a variance before you take it down. And basically he was given till the next deadline for the BZA to either have it down or make application. And the thought processes behind that was give him an opportunity to be heard before we start making the school take their sign down. Because if we say it's okay, you know, that's overly burdensome to a property owner. So that was done. That's how we're here. The staff did have, and if you do grant the variance, and I don't know that you're there, but if you grant the variance, We do have a couple of suggestions as far as conditions that you may want to consider. One of those is that it's only apply to this property and the sign details as submitted, so they can't be changed so it can't be changed. And should the sign need to be replaced, then it would have to meet the requirements of the sign code at the time that it's replaced. And also, one of the considerations is the neighbors and the bright lights, so that the reader board would put a timer on it, so that the reader board cuts off between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. Staff's feeling is there's minimal traffic through there at that time, probably not serving any purpose or very little purpose, and it would take the illumination out of the neighborhood. And it would also be required to follow all the regulated colors, refresh, and other regulations for the I don't know why I want to call it emergency message. It's electronic message center. Require all the other regulations that go along with the electronic message center requirements that's in the code, as far as not dancing and whirl, and that's basically print, and then it moves from that to another image within a specified time. So if you and what staff's recommending there is basically, okay, if you allow it, put a condition on there that it has to comply with all the other regulations of the message centers. And Mr. Chairman, that's, if the board has any questions.
I got a couple. Number one is, and I guess you answered it already, that they did not pull a permit to build a sign.
No, they did not get the zoning compliance requirement that was required.
Okay. You answered both questions. Any more questions of Paradise? The sign is up and running.
Yes. I would say a month and a half.
Any complaints, any issues?
There was a few phone calls when it first went up. One was from a church to find out if the code had changed. And other than that, I have not received. That was the only call I think I received on it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Paradise? Anyone here want to speak for the sign? Yes. Yes, sir. Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. State your name and address, please.
Wade, Aiken, South Carolina, 421 York Street, Southeast.
And you represent?
Unlimited, South Carolina, Rudolph, South Carolina.
Let me ask you a question before you start. Have you put any other signs up in the city of North Augusta?
Yes, sir. Not with them. When I was in the sign business for myself. I did a lot of sign work with Greg, yes, well.
Okay, well, I don't know how else to say this, except you should have known you had to get permits, and you should have known the ordinances. So that's all I'll say about that.
I would say this gentleman right here has known me for probably 40 years. It's the first time that has ever happened. I think there was some confusion over the things that kind of talking about with the state cart on the location. We can't, you still have to abide by the local code and all this kind of stuff. Trying to call me, told me it was installed. I didn't even know it had been installed. I was on vacation, to be honest with you, up in the mountains. But anyway, I told Tommy that I was right into it, and I think they say that I've always been proactive in everything I've ever done in the sign business. 20-something years I've been associated with it. So this was a big play on my part, and with all you can say.
And you won't do it again.
Won't do it again. school that's got 5 or 6 or 7, 8 grades, I don't know how many it might have. If you got something going on in kindergarten, you want to put up, you got something in the first grade or 5th grade or something like that. One sign, the old type, cannot handle that. Simply can't do it. These signs are unique codes. What's nice about them is they can use programs to work with the code. Programs where one, Simon knows this, where we work with an Aiken to do it. You gotta have a photo cell in there so that the light dims when it's at night. There's ways you can operate an electronic sign. Not all company signs are the same. There's only some that can do certain things and some can do it all. The ways you can do it is one you can program from your computer with programs that show you like say your sign in your area. More or less says, okay, it's going to burn this bright for these hours and not so bright these hours. Or it can have one that you can go into your computer, you can turn it up and down. No one's going to sit around a computer all day and do that. So it's really the best thing to have for automatic light adjustment. Sign burns the brightest daytime. Sun's on this type thing. It runs probably anywhere less than 20% of its capacity in lighting at night. It shows up better. Okay? If it's too bright, then you've got a problem. It needs either adjustment or if it doesn't have an automatic cell to it. That type thing. Because you've seen them, they're too clear, you can't read them, that type thing. Sign location where it's at in North Augusta Middle is really ideal. I took some pictures of taking around really off the earth. As you can see, where the old sign was. The old sign did not meet the 50-50 rule either, from what I could see. But that sign not been up there long, so they must have some concessions before. I don't know that. It doesn't matter. In this case, what we're looking at here is the county has tried to standardize the signs, the school board has, and what they're going with, number issue one is cost, probably number one reason. Second thing is that every size sign you have out there, as far as the electronic sign, you have various sizes. You got to program each one of them differently than the person does it. You can actually control these either from the school, or if the school board would elect to control from wherever they can control it. But they would have to have a program for each separate sign if there were different signs. So that's one of the advantages of standardizing.
They have standardized on
More or
that
less
size.
there's plenty of them. I can give you indications. See how popular these are. We have one place on Main School, it's in the district, that they have 2 driveways. And they have the board just bought another sign to go in the driveway. PTA asked the commission to pay for the other one because they said information is vital. Think about the information on how to get the different grades and what's going on. Also, a good way to communicate with parents when emergency situations happen today. And this is a bad thing that's going on in this world, we know. And if you give people information, they're informed, they're a lot better off than when they aren't informed. And this is just another source of communication that I think is vital. It's not like a business. The business won't be big name out there in advertising. The schools don't need big names. They need the board space more so than they need the school name. Okay? That's why these kind of young size. They're not into profit or anything like that. They out to teach children and teach people informed and parents and stuff like that. So hopefully if you're through this for them, over there just recently got one there's the elementary school there. Almost 25, over 25 locations over the last few years. And they're going to continue doing it. They're all done. And because it has been that effective.
They're telling us that Lone Knox, North Augusta Middle, Hammond Hills are next.
They're probably going to be on the next list. What the other reason we're trying to standardize too, I think, in my personal opinion, is that each school, they don't want one school to say, well, why did you do something than I got? That type thing. Well, there are some locations that do have bigger signs. Various reasons. One might be just a school located on 4 highway. ID signs for the schools also lit with LED lights. This is a big cost savings to them right there. These signs operate with just pennies compared to what, just turn the lights on the other side, just to light it up with one message.
So, yeah, so if you had known about the requirement for a permit and you had to,
I did apply for it. I did apply for a permit. Okay. I turned the paperwork in. Wrong paperwork. That's when I got Tommy. They got Tommy. Tommy sent me the right paperwork. Then I sent it in. He goes, wait a minute. Yeah, you got this thing up. I said, I got it. What? You got me kidding.
so okay, so if you hadn't installed it yet, what would you have done?
I would have done what I've always done. I would have gotten the application approved before we ever put it up.
But, so, would you have changed the size of your sign to comply? Or you?
I would have come back to the county, school board, tell them, y'all didn't approve it, and therefore you would have got the, put a bid up or something, because it's not the same size.
So it'd have been the county's decision.
More expensive sign.
But they would have had to come back to the city of Northwest.
Right.
My understanding of the state law, Congress County going over, he's absolutely right. That's what it says, but it still has to comply with the local code.
I have a question. Are the other cities where this is going, Aiken, say Langley, all that, are they, are you having to get a variance every place because this?
Not the first place yet has turned it down.
Well,
There's a third variance we gotta apply for, yes.
okay, so is our code out of sync with?
That was gonna be something I was gonna recommend to Tommy, is that with the rewrite of the code, they take a look at this, because we've already asked it about the churches.
Yeah.
The sign section of the code, I believe, was updated shortly before the former planning director left, so it's fairly new. But I think my opinion is we need to drill into it. There certainly should be some revisions there and updated, and make sure that what we have is workable for all of the districts and all of the various uses.
Well, I'm not saying that I want us to just get rid of our code like that, but look at it, and are we out of sync with the rest of the area? And we must be if this is the only one that's having a variance. Well, I know that, but if all the others have been, you haven't had to go through this process with that particular size sign, then maybe we need to look at our code.
Well, I'm always for that kind of thing. I believe it's not just a sign. I think technology is changing all the time. And there's a code every place. Some are old and taken off the book and they aren't even enforced or something.
Right.
But codes need to be added. One of the codes I'm very big favor of is the video. I don't think you should have video. You can't control what goes up there. And we don't want some things on those things. I think.
There is some confusion on our sign code because the Friends of the Library just bought an electronic message center for the library, and we spent $39,000 on that thing, and but the sign company came back to us and said the sign is not the right size. And they said, but we're going to take that expense on our own. So I don't know whether it's their mistake or if there's some confusion in the code. I don't know.
It is. There was that sign predated me.
Right.
Okay. But it was approved by the planning department. It was permitted and by the previous planning director and allowed to go in. Now there is some history there that I'm not privy to as far as they had called and got the specs and built it to the specs, and by that time there'd been changes in the code, and so there was some confusion there on that one. And I think the planning director said, well, okay, since we had told you this, you can do it. But if they did get the proper permits.
Well, it just, I know there was some confusion, but I didn't know whether it was because of the code confusion or whether it was just a misunderstanding with the sign company. I don't know.
And I think there may have been some changes in the sign code. Mr. Chairman, can I ask him a question?
Yes.
Does this sign contain the photoelectric cell to control the lighting?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that question too. Go ahead.
Yeah, it has it.
It does have it.
Is there any other signs like that here in North Augusta? Does the high school have one?
The high school does not have one, but the closest one in high school will be, we put one up at, in Middle Valley. All our signs have them, okay? There's some signs in the arts, couple schools that don't have them, that, they could buy them, more or less. Somebody played with the words. They said, must have capabilities, they say, must have. And, somebody took it like that, and not really, they didn't really with that, they just played it the wrong way, not me, but.
There's no message board up at the high school or anything? Is it still one of these?
This is the first one.
High school was on the scoreboard down.
Okay.
Where is it controlled from? From the district or from the school itself?
School does right now, okay? If the school district wanted to do it, they could. But we got, what, 25 some schools out there, and different programs going on each one. I think that's probably the reason why they left it to that. If they wanted to go to the capability of internet networking to it, they could. This is how advanced these things have become. You can have a program on your phone, and you can get into your network at school. You can just sit ahead and pop a message in there.
Easy hackable, it sounds like.
No, it's not even hackable. It's just makes that, you don't have the IP codes and all that kind of stuff to go with it. It's difficult. It makes it where the person in charge of the sign doesn't have to be on the facility in order to put a message up there. If you call that, said, like the city had one, if you wanted to put a message about special meeting we're going to have from the zoning committee, you have to have that, you want to put it up there, you call up whoever's in charge of that, and they might not be in town, but as long as you have access to the internet through a laptop or whatever, they could put that message up for you. The nice thing about these signs, I'm not missing this, you can program them where you can run different, you can run multitude of ads or messages. You can say, all right, I want to do this 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock every day, Monday through Friday. Then I got, it's only going to come up to like 10 seconds, I think that's good, then 10 seconds on that. And then you're going to have another one that's going to come on, maybe 4 or 5 more, okay? After 9 o'clock, the other one is showing, the other one is not until the next day.
Yeah, that's one of the things that bothers me about these rolling signs. Every time I go by the one at SRP up on the hill, my eyes immediately go to it and take it off the road. You know, you got to make yourself watch what you're doing.
Well, believe it or not, Tommy, I think what took 3 years for us to finally get it past Macon. And myself and another guy worked on it. And we got all highway studies. Every one of them came back. Everybody kept saying, every place we went back then, it's distracting. It's going to be distracting. Came back and said, electronic signs are not distracting. The reason being is you can read them faster. You can read the signs about 3 seconds. Where if you got old type, and put the words all jammed up there, they're all black letters, whatever. It's hard to read, especially at night. The other thing you got a problem with that is somebody that's happened to schools do so a lot. They can walk up and change the letters to mean something else.
Right. I got one other question. You mentioned ads, and I think you weren't talking about true ads, but these signs, the schools and these signs, should they have the capability of school gets out at 10 o'clock tomorrow, courtesy of Joe Blow Electric? public school are making money by letting General Electrics, sponsor that message.
That becomes a billboard type thing, and that's not what it's for. But if they would have to do around the tune on something like that, this is my understanding of it, is they would have to say, I want to thank the sponsor so-and-so for supporting something happening, okay? They would advertise it, they would say, yeah. School board can control all that, but that's how they would try to, if you have non-profit organizations, their signs, not meant for billboard advertising, but for, business there or profit. One thing they can do is they can put it up there, my understanding, is thank you, XYZ Company, for your continued support.
Unless we restrict it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, let me say this, and I can't cite the case, but there is a case that went to the United States Supreme Court. You can regulate the size of signage. You cannot regulate what the sign says. You cannot regulate the content of the sign.
Okay. Any other questions, sir?
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come tonight. I'd also like to apologize for that happening. My 22 years I've been in business has happened to me. And I was curious if I had anything to do with it. I'm the one who called me about that. Thank you for calling.
The reason I brought it up because I want to remind you, that was all.
You did the right thing.
Any other questions from the public hearing? No. We're going to close the public hearing. All right. What we generally do with these is we take the 10 items one at a time. One at a time, and if as long as we find yes for each one of them, we're okay. If we find one that is no, the process stops and the variance is not granted. So, I guess I will start with the first one. Go ahead.
If it is denied, then we'll take action. The city will move forward with ensuring compliance with the zoning ordinance, which in this case would be removal of the sign. You can, correct. Now, you could grant the variance for the electronic message board and say it has to be 60/40 as required, so then they would have to modify that sign. You could say, no, we don't want the electronic sign there, we don't believe it meets the criteria, and then it would be denied, carte blanche, or you can approve it, or you can approve it with conditions. The size is not the issue, it's the ratio. You have the sign, the fixed sign, and then you have the electronic message center. And what our code says is that 50% of the sign can be a regular signage, and basically the message center can't exceed 50% of the sign face. No, sir. It's the box.
What they're asking for is basically 40/60.
It would be 60% of the sign face being message center instead of 50%. The way we measure the sign, that's a slippery. That's a slope. That's it. We have to enforce everybody the same. Okay. So if we said, okay, if you do that, that's part of the sign. If we include the pole as signage, then there's a lot of people that have allowed 100 square foot of sign. They got 100 square feet up here, and we'd have to say, hold up, we got to calculate the area of the pole. So that would be the way, that would be changing the way we do business. I don't dislike where you're trying to go, but it's, you understand where I'm coming from too. Yeah.
And if it gets granted, one of the conditions would be there'd be nothing nothing hanging below it. We can stop that. Okay. All right. So let's take the first one. An unnecessary hardship exists. The applicant states that the proposed sign meets the needs for the school to communicate important information to students, parents, and the public, and that signs of similar size with reader boards have not been rejected at any school location by other jurisdictions. And we're talking about any school location in our school district, correct?
I'm okay with that one. I mean, I think that, we've just addressed that issue of the size of the sign to make it, conform with other jurisdictions. Our sign ordinance may need to be changed, but that's not, here or there, but I do think that they need something to communicate with parents.
My kids are not, my youngest has not been removed for 3 years now. And that's, the signs they have now is off.
Yep.
It's like, it's late, they don't have it on there, letters are missing. So I say it is the read board would be very beneficial.
I'm good with it.
So we'll say okay with that one. Okay. There are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. The applicant states that schools typically fall within residential environments, but that the current code does not address its role in the character of the surrounding neighborhoods.
I agree with that, because you don't have North Augusta up here, elementary, Belvedere, you said Belvedere just got one up?
Belvedere's in the county.
I understand that, but I'm just,
We can expect that if one school gets it, the rest of them are gonna be happy.
Absolutely are.
Yep. So if we approve this one, we can just buckle up and get ready for the others.
can we just approve this and all that?
Are we okay with this one?
I am.
Yes.
The conditions do not generally apply to the other property in the vicinity. I don't even think we need to read that one. That's okay. Because of these conditions, the application of this chapter to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. The applicant states that the North Augusta Development Code does not directly address school signage. The argument is that prohibiting an electronic reader board would unreasonably limit the amount of information the school is able to transmit through signage. They state that the overall sign area proposed is smaller than that is allowed by the code and otherwise meets the intent of the code if the electronic reader board is accepted.
Well, I think they're absolutely right. It would limit the amount of information because you, like you say, you put up one message or maybe two, and that's all you can do. And they stay up till the custodian goes out there and changes it.
Just a question. So if you put the sign, if the sign was made as big to the maximum allowed by the code, say overall signs.
The sign's smaller than one of the layers. That's because the rebuilding is. So
if you made it that bigger like it was before, and made it 50-50, would the what you're proposing now?
Still look like,
like to say it. Yeah. Okay. We okay with that one?
Yes.
The authorization of the variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by granting of the variance. Harm to the character of the district may include structures that are significantly out of scale and the creation or potential for the creation of excessive noise, light, traffic, incompatible late-night activity. It's certainly not going to create any noise, I don't think.
No. And they're gonna turn it down at night.
But, Mr. Paradise, question I was asking him, now you made comment about putting a timer on there,
Yes,
to turn it off from 10 to 6.
yes.
Will the system that's on there that dims it, is that still acceptable, or do you still asking to be turned off?
That is helpful. But I would still, staff recommendation is for it to be turned off. That way, during those hours, there's no impact on the neighborhood at all.
Correct. Now, do we, and I'm not trying to stretch or anything here, but I am. But the park across the street,
It's further up.
which is more across from the neighborhoods around them, does that field have lights on them? I know the field that next to the school has lights on them,
Correct.
but the one across where the water park is,
I don't think it has any lights.
I don't know. And that is something, is the timer, that is, certainly, I think of, okay, what kind of ideas that if you grant variance that might be helpful. Helpful to the applicant, helpful to the public.
well, that's what I was kinda, there's that
Things work.
like practice the football field and soccer, the one next to the school, they got lights on them, and I think I rode through the other night about 9:30 and the lights were on. And they're not, they're the LED non-directional, we're putting out the site, but you definitely could tell that they were on, so I was just kinda curious.
But what I was, gonna say, it doesn't hurt my feelings if you don't want to,
Turn them off, or
if you don't want to follow that recommendation, it's not a big deal with staff.
test it, and you go out, or have a staff member go out every night for the next 30 days or something.
We'd like for you to do that.
Yeah, light meter and so forth.
No, we can't.
We'll have to order one first.
Is it possible to have a timer when it's got a photo cell?
Yes, ma'am.
Sign can be programmed to run anytime you want.
Okay, all
This
right.
is desire, obviously, this desire and go forward. Ronnie Robinson has to. I told him I might want to do that. He said, I prefer not to go back. Because I said, why doesn't he get the name?
Yeah.
I have photographs. You don't go get photographs. The sign is not going to be seen by anybody. Because you go up the hill, you go down. You're almost in the driveway before you see it. If you go up the hill, the neighborhood is blocked by buildings. The one across the street where the park's at, there's a tree line there. The houses are on the other side of the street, there's on the other side of the tree line.
Tree line, yes, sir.
The lighting from the sign is not like lighting from the street. It's not going to light up there.
Correct.
It's immediately around because of the way it's made.
Yes, sir.
And, they lit up this whole area. The ones, the old signs that first came out with it, every kind of light control, they light up the whole world. These, they got black background to them, so they don't do that. They don't reflect the light thing. And, like I said, it burns bright as the day. That might run almost 100% of the power using daytime at less than 20%. Probably somewhere close to 10% in mine.
Okay.
That's very dim.
All right, thank you.
Are we okay with that one, number 5?
Yes.
Number 6. In the approval of an application for variance from the provisions of Article 13, signs regulating the size, height, appearance, and location of a sign. The Board of Zoning Appeals shall find that no alternative signage solution that complies with the provisions of Article 13 is available and would provide adequate visibility, recognition, and understanding. Electronic reader board signs are allowed in certain zoning districts: office commercial OC, general commercial GC, thoroughfare commercial TC, and industrial districts, but cannot exceed 50% of the sign area. The applicant requests a reader board occupying 60% of the total signage area. The applicant states that the cost to maintain a non-standard sign is significantly higher and would lead to the need for additional training by operators. I hate to tell you this, but dollars don't get into this into our discussions. I think they're probably right about the no alternative signage solution, because it's obvious. You can't have somebody out there changing the message when you need to.
As well as, and I'm just throwing this out there because I think we already got a decision, but like Kevin brought up earlier, he built the sign the way what our standards is, he would probably be 50%, so if he's 60%, we're going with a 60-40 schedule where he's at now, the sign's already smaller than what we already allow, so we could say, screw it, you can't have it, and he can go put a big ass sign up there. Say it like that, but I mean, then we're going to get in trouble because he's got to rebuild it. Right? I mean, I'm sorry to say it like
You're
that.
right. You're right.
I mean, okay, next.
We good with that?
I'm good with that one.
Jimmy, you good with that one?
Yes,
Sure. Sure now.
Time's up.
Number 7, the Board of Zoning Appeals may not grant a variance, the effect of which would be to allow the establishment of a use not otherwise permitted in a zoning district. Signs are allowed in public zoning to extend physically non-conforming land of use and to change the zoning district boundaries. And we're not doing any of that, so that's okay. If the unnecessary hardship is self-imposed by the applicant, the variance should not be granted.
It's been there, so
Well,
it is what it is.
The applicant states that the location and use of the property warrant the variance request. I think the use of the sign warrants the variance, but I don't think necessarily that location could be in some other places maybe, but that's the difference.
He went back to the exact same place as the original.
Original sign. Yeah. We good with that one?
Yeah.
Number 9, the fact that the property may be utilized more profitable should the variance be granted should not be considered a grant. We're not.
I am okay with that.
Number 10, in granting a variance, the Board of Zoning Appeals may attach such conditions regarding location, character, or other feature of the proposed building structure or use as the board may consider advisable to promote the public health, safety, or general welfare. Now, our staff has given us a couple of items, and I want to change just one thing. No, I don't. I see it's already there. The variance is granted will only apply to this property and sign details as submitted. Should the sign need to be replaced, it should meet the requirements of the sign code in place at the time or request another variance if applicable. I agree with that.
I have one question here, and I never ask it up at the library, and I've been meaning to. How long do these signs last?
They put 100,000 out, which is probably 10, 12 years.
Because my math is not that good, so if they just did 12 years. Okay. I was just curious, and I've been meaning to find out. Sure.
Staff recommends limiting the hours of operation of the sign so that the reader board is not operated between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The sign would be expected to follow all regulated colors, refresh, and other regulations of the sign code. Any limitation to hours of operation should be specified by the board as part of the case order. I only want to caution us about one thing here. It's obvious there's going to be some more of these coming to us from the school board, especially North Augusta High School that has a stadium. Even though they got a reader board inside. And Paul Knox and North Augusta Middle School have basketball games at night during the basketball season. Now, I think we should allow the signs to be operational until those games end. I don't know how we control that, so that the people that at those games will see any emergency or any other sign that they need to see when they're leaving. 10 o'clock seems like a reasonable time. Most ball games get over by 10 o'clock.
I would at least push it back to 11. Because if you sit here and say until the ball game is over with, that means somebody's got to sit there. Well, this game's going into triple overtime.
And I just want us to be, if we get some more of these, I just want us to be consistent. At least if we put that in.
I was really thinking that we shouldn't have that a condition at all, but then you think about other signs that we know are coming, we feel like will be coming up. Hammond Hills, smack in the middle of a neighborhood, Paul Knox, all that, the houses are right there. This is a sort of an anomaly, this one, it doesn't have houses right there. But then if you look at the others, and we would get complaints if we let them go without dimming it at all, with only dimming it.
But do we, talking about the church on Martintown, do you cut them off at 11 o'clock, midnight, 10 o'clock as well?
Well, they, if I remember right, they tabled theirs, or we tabled it, for other reasons rather than that.
No, we tabled it because we thought that we said the zoning was gonna be changed.
Yeah.
And that's another issue. We would like for the development code to address this also, please.
Yes. Mr. Newman,
Go ahead.
if I could reference what you were saying about a church,
That's next month.
where this 10 to 6 a.m. this time limit came from is from a variance request that we had from a church while I was in Aiken for a reader board sign, a sign like this at a church that was along the bypass, and they were concerned about the brightness in a curve and the light, and that's where it was put in, and that's how the board approved it, was that condition. So it has, we did put it in for a church in that case. I think each case that you do for a variance, you have unique circumstances for each area, for each piece of land. What Hammond Hills has may not be North Augusta Middle School, and North Augusta High is certainly different than those other schools. So and it may not be a good idea. You may not want to put a time limit in there. Just because we brought the point up doesn't mean you have to do it. It's just an option.
I sort of like the time.
Could there be a way that we can revisit the time after us seeing it, you seeing it, complaints, is it 90 days that the lights are, okay, then we go to 11 to 6, it's automatically dimming. I hate to, because some parents are working till midnight and one who's not taking their kids, and some parents are leaving at 5 o'clock in the morning. I hate to cut it off completely. But I somewhat agree. 12 to 6, I definitely push 10 back to at least 11 if we're gonna put it off.
I can agree with 11 because that pretty much gets all of it. Especially at the schools that have extracurricular activity at night. The elementary schools will not be out that late. Okay. So what do we want? 11?
At least.
I'm okay with 11.
Staff is open to suggestions for other conditions from the board. I don't know of any of them. Can anybody think of one? Okay, our great motion maker, you got one prepared?
Let's see if I can wing it here. Try to write one. Based on the findings previously discussed and voted on, I move that application ZB 20-009 North Augusta Middle School sign, a request by Aiken County Public Schools for variance pursuant to section 13.8.3.L.I and 13.8.3.L.I. Signage allow for non-residential districts and uses electronic reader board sign, leader boards district and sign area. Of the North Augusta Development Code for sign message center variance to be granted with the following agreements, conditions, stipulations, or directives. We have three. This variance is granted will apply only to the property and the sign details as submitted. Should the sign need to be replaced, it should meet the requirements of the sign code in place at the time of request. Another variance if applicable. Number 2, staff recommends limiting the hours of operation of signs so that the reader board is not operated between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. The sign would be expected to follow all the regulated colors, refresh, and other regulations of the sign code. Any limitations to hours of operation should be specified by the board as part of the case order. Actually, we have two.
Two, right, we didn't have any others.
There's only two.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, we have any other discussion on it? All in favor, aye? Aye. Motion will pass unanimous. Thank you, sir. I would suggest to you that you might want to talk to the school district about, going to a 50-50 sign so that you don't have to get a variance for that again, but that's up to y'all.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Burkholz is coming back in, so we'll continue our business. You saw one that you recognized, didn't you? All right, we'll go back to the agenda where we had the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion that we approve the minutes?
Well, I had a couple of questions.
September the 2nd.
On page 6, two things. Ms. Stallworth asked if it was going to be a national car wash or a local hometown car wash. Mr. Titus responded, no. Well, right. And so did he say, or is that correct?
He said it was going to be local.
He said it was going to be local, so we need to amend that. Ms. Stallworth stated, back lower on that page, Ms. Stallworth stated that we would not have an exit entrance from Martintown, and it was confirmed. What did I mean by that? Exit entrance, what?
They got to make a right turn on Francis Street or whatever it is. Right turn only coming out of there. They got to go that way rather than coming back to Martintown.
Okay. I couldn't.
Yeah, that was
I don't notice where they've already come in and cut all the grass and put a sign up. All that grass has been cut.
Really?
To the car wash.
I didn't notice that. I think that was that. So down lower, I asked if it would be a right and a left turn out in the Martintown Road, and that was correct. But I mean, he said yes, it would be right and left. But this other one would be
Francis.
on Francis.
The one at the top was on Francis, wasn't it?
No, there was the one going out through Lytle.
Yeah. Francis was over there.
Okay, the other one. Okay.
Filling station.
Yeah.
Filling station.
Right.
So what does that mean?
Still on page 6.
Yes, page 6. In the middle. I stated that we would not have an exit entrance from Martintown, and it was confirmed. I don't know what, if I said that, I'm not sure what I was meaning by that.
Exit/entrance.
That's, from Martintown, and it was confirmed, but then down here, he says we're going, we're, left and right out on Martintown Road, so you're not gonna be able to enter it from Martintown Road, is that what we're saying?
No, I was under the impression you were gonna go in from Martintown, but you were only gonna go out. I think you did say both ways.
I'm going back to my recollection of what the site plan looked like. And if I remember correctly, there was a feeder road that went behind the car wash. And then
Lytle's parking lot.
came out of Lytle, came behind the proposed car wash, and then came out the intersection with Martintown Road. And that road extension would serve the car wash and whatever is developed behind it on the other parcel that they're subdividing off from this. So it wouldn't have a direct access, it would get access off this side road and not direct onto Martintown Road.
And then DOT was gonna have to really dictate
Right.
what he
Well,
was.
I think that's just a confusing paragraph, I'm not sure what, that, I don't care, but somebody down the line is looking at it, we might need to clarify that.
And how would you like me to clarify it? I'll put it here.
Well, if you read it, it says, Mr. Titus, stated it would be a drive that would feed the connection to the car wash and another entrance to Lytle. It will also provide for the potential to further develop on anything else.
Access mainly, I guess we could just say that I was asking for a clarification on the, access there, from Lytle, I suppose.
So Ms. Stallworth asked for clarification of connection with Lytle,
That's fine.
and then,
Sorry.
strike and stated to, and it was confirmed. In that
I
sense,
think just get rid of that, yeah. I mean, if that's all right with y'all, I don't. I know sometimes you get in trouble and go back and read the minutes and you think, well, this is not right, you know?
Well, that, if you will remember, that site plan showed an entrance and an exit at one spot on that site plan on the far end down there. It showed an entrance and an exit on Martintown Road.
correct.
Right.
And that
This
road,
next down lower, there would be a right and a left turn out on Martintown Road. But I guess that doesn't say it's an entrance also, it just says that it's going to, you know how some of those places we made them do just a one-way turn.
Okay. So do you wanna go back and amend these and bring it back to us, or you want?
that's up to you. What I have is, I've changed the first paragraph to say, Ms. Stallworth asked if it was going to be a national car wash or a local hometown car wash. Mr. Titus responded, it will be local, is what I have changed that to in my notes. And then the next one was, Ms. Stallworth asked for clarification on the connection with Lytle. And then Mr. Titus stated it would be a drive that would feed connection to the car wash, another entrance to Lytle. And will also provide for the potential of further development for anything else, access mainly. So that's how that paragraph would read.
So I think what we need to do is have another motion to amend.
I'll make the motion then.
It is as written.
With the changes.
Yeah, with the
Yes.
changes. Okay. So now, do we have a discussion on that? All in favor of the amendment, say aye. What do we do with the original motion? Mr. Parliamentarian. To approve the minutes like they were, and then Kathy brought up the two changes.
Yeah, we just said
I
it.
move to approve them as amended.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Approve as amended.
Second? All in favor? Aye. So, okay. Anything else to cover tonight?
Well, this doesn't have to be on the record, I have one thing to,
We're
close
still,
the meeting, we're
still,
still in the meeting.
We're still on record. Anything that we need to bring up on the meeting?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
You had to bring it up. I mean, a nice 3-day trip to Hilton Head or something on the city of Cohen.
Well, we thought about sending y'all to the SCAPA conference, but that is now virtual.
Okay. So we could do that.
What is, and this is where, and Mr. Newman, this is something I've been needing to talk to y'all about. And so this is a good, I appreciate you bringing it up. You can, I mean,
So we'll
that's
close
up to
the
y'all.
meeting and we'll talk. Anything else pertaining to tonight's meeting?